Let's catch up with former Foreign Minister Alexander Downer, who joins me live in the Adelaide studio. Good to see you in the flesh, Alexander. Give us your take on this horrible tragedy in Gaza. 7 aid workers killed, among them the Australian Zombie Frankham. All sorts of condemnation going Israel's way. How do we get to a proper and effective investigation of what's transpired?
Well, first of all, the Australian government is calling for an independent investigation, and the Israeli government is saying this was clearly an accident and there will be an independent investigation. So I would have thought, until the investigation has completed its work, was the end of it. Sad as the event is, I mean, this is a war zone, though, so there are huge risks for anybody who drives into a war zone, and this is a great tragedy.
Yeah, it is a great tragedy, and I would have thought those risks, though, were self-evident. But let's just have a look at what Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong have been saying.
Australia has called for a humanitarian ceasefire. We have voted that way at the United Nations. I've issued multiple statements with the Prime Minister of Canada and New Zealand, as well as with ASEAN leaders. From the very beginning, we have said that every innocent life matters.
And I have said publicly, as has the Prime Minister, we want an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. We have said directly to the Netanyahu government that their actions are meaning that they are losing support amongst many countries. And I would say again what I've said to them directly, that the Netanyahu government must change course.
Penny Wong there saying that Israel has to change course. Have Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong gone too far in their rhetoric against Israel?
They've gone much too far. I think what they've been saying is a disgrace, frankly, and it's an embarrassment. They call on Israel to stop fighting, but they don't call on Hamas, which is a terrorist organisation, to cease attacking Israelis, cease attacking Jews, cease firing missiles into Israel randomly. All the condemnation is directed at Israel, and entirely for political reasons. This is driven absolutely by domestic politics to make sure that left-wing voters don't swing over from Labor to the Greens. That's what it's all about. I mean, the Labor Party says it wants a ceasefire. Leave Hamas in. They want to leave Hamas in place, in situ in Gaza, and the Hamas will just go back and attack the Israelis over and over again, because their mission in life is to destroy Israel.
The first step surely has to be the hostages. There are at least 100 hostages, over 100 hostages still held by Hamas. The best reports suggest maybe half of those are dead and they're holding the bodies. We don't know for sure. But surely that has to be the starting point, the first demand for anybody looking at a ceasefire.
They should immediately release the hostages, and Hamas should surrender their weapons and cease fighting. And by lunchtime tomorrow, there would be no further fighting in Gaza if that were the case. No further fighting at all. But all the condemnation is directed at the Israelis and none of it at Hamas, and I think that's a disgraceful thing.
Well, tell us how this plays out, because this is much broader, obviously, than what the Australian government is saying. The Americans have been quite weak of late. The United Nations playing its usual games. Most of the international community focusing on Israel, putting pressure on Israel. How does that affect the outcomes? Would there be more chance of a better outcome if they directed a lot more of their rhetoric and actions at Hamas?
Of course. I mean, it's not going to make any difference to the Israelis what President Biden and particularly Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong say. It's not going to make any difference. This is an existential struggle for the Israelis. Hamas wants to destroy Israel and kill Jews. They don't make any secret of that, and they did it on the 7th of October. So it doesn't matter what these people say, these politicians say, for domestic political reasons. The Israelis have to win this war, and the war will be over as soon as Hamas surrenders and releases the hostages. It's as simple as that.
Just very quickly, the relationship between Australia and Israel, is it being damaged by this?
I mean, the Israelis won't care too much, because ultimately they just have to win the war, because it's an existential struggle. They'll just forget what the Australian government said. It's irrelevant.
Alexander, thanks for joining us.